And I say this all the time too, we need cognitive therapy. We need it because if we just stay in the body and we don't work on making meaning and connecting the dots, we're only healing 50% of the puzzle.
If you guys are like me and wanting to be more mindful about what's in your products, how many toxins are in your products, and making sure that you're putting good things on your skin and into your body, I highly recommend Osea. I did a total revamp on all my products, and this is one I have been using and now is a staple in my bathroom. I particularly love their Ocean Eyes Age Defining Serum. I feel like I don't have bags under my eyes anymore, and I just feel really good putting this on my skin, knowing something good is going on my skin and into my body. So if you want to check out Osea's products, use our code QTCPOD10 to get 10% off your first purchase.
I am very excited to welcome our next guest, Lauren, whose content on social media just grabbed my attention because it speaks to all the narratives that we talk about on here on Quiet the Clock. So welcome, Lauren. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here and to have a conversation with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So it was one post in particular that grabbed my attention. And then I just deep dived into your content. And I love everything you're saying about timelines are bullshit and owning our own timeline and narrative. But I want you to share a little bit more about the work that you do. You're a somatic coach, therapist coach, and tell me how you found yourself doing that work.
Yeah. So just to keep it short, or else we would be here for a really long time, I'm going to take us back to about 8.5 years ago, because that's really when kind of the pinnacle of the somatic work started to make its way into my life. But I started my coaching practice about 8.5 years ago. And if you followed me on social media, I was often reflected back that people thought I lived this highlight reel life, that I lived this glorious life, because I was traveling the world with friends. My business was booming at the time. I was being featured on NBC News and the Drew Barrymore show. All this stuff was happening. And I also had this real life version of a Kindle that was by my side. I called it my Kindle that was traveling with me. It was like I was living this life that everybody thought was perfect. And it's important to note that during this time too, I was doing all of the things that we as successful women were taught to do. I was reading one personal development book every month. I had a team of therapists. I had a team of mindset coaches. I was eating well. I was exercising. I was reciting my morning affirmations. I was doing all the things that we're taught we need to do in order to live a really robust life. And what people didn't see was that on the inside, nothing matched what was happening externally. And I had one day in particular, I call it my rock bottom moment, my rock bottom day, where everything came crashing down. And I had 3 calls that changed the trajectory of where I was. And really, these 3 calls led me to the path of finding somatic work. But I woke up one morning, I was reciting my morning affirmations in the mirror, and I looked down at my phone and I had several missed calls from my perfect Kindle boyfriend, from his mom, calling to let me know that he had checked himself into rehab for the 6th time that year. So that was call number 1.
Whoa.
Yeah. Okay. Call number 2 came from my accountant calling to let me know that my business, my seemingly booming business, was $30,000 in debt because I was spending money quicker than I could make it. I was just spending it left and right.
Wow.
And then the 3rd call I received that day was from my doctor calling to let me know that a biopsy I had taken earlier that week had come back as potential cancer. This is all in one day.
I was just about to clarify that because I have chills everywhere. This is all in one day. Wow. I mean, the universe is screaming something.
Yeah.
Whoa. Oh my God. I can't even imagine that day for you.
Yeah.
And I love what you're sharing so openly and so vulnerably and so transparently about what we see or what we assume is happening in other people's life is not the full story, because I love that you're sharing that, because we get so caught in comparison, and the place we go, the place we compare is social media, and we make stories based on what we see, and we don't know the full picture. So I love that you're sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to normalize it because it's funny. I did a Q&A on my stories a couple of days ago, and someone asked me, how do I quit comparing myself to couples that I see on Instagram? And this is a perfect example of what you see is not real life. You see a highlight reel of what's happening in people's lives.
Right.
And so it was
posting the best. Everybody's posting the best.
Always. Yeah. Because I mean, you're not going to post the fights that you have with your significant other. You're not going to post yourself being in a puddle on the floor and crying because you're 36 and you don't know when you're going to find your person and have children, right? Nobody posts those things because they're vulnerable and they're intimate, and they should be vulnerable, intimate moments. And so we just see highlight reels. But it was in that moment when I hit that rock bottom that I realized, okay, wait a second, something isn't jiving here. Something isn't working. And I had a dear friend at that time who had started seeing a somatic therapist. And she said, look, I know you are just disgusted with the personal development world at this point. I had spent at that point like almost 6 figures in therapy and coaching.
Sure, easily. Yeah.
Yeah. And she said to me, I think that you should try this. I think you should see this practitioner I'm seeing. And so I went to my first somatic therapy session and my whole world opened up. And I felt this is the missing piece. I haven't looked at. I can tell you all day my patterns. I can cognitively tell you about them, but I had not looked at the deeper issue, which was my nervous system and how it was reacting to these patterns of unworthiness that I really needed to heal for myself. And so went down that path, ended up meeting my first healthy partner at 32, which is sad to say, but it's true to say, because I think if we're not doing the work and the work that really hits at the core, we can't change the pattern. You can't. So I found my first healthy partnership in my 30s. I ended up taking my business from 30K in debt to making 30K in 1 month, turned it all around. And the best part was that I eradicated the cancer scare. It went away.
Oh my gosh.
So it's that piece that's missing for me.
Can you share more? I mean, I obviously know what it is, but can you share more about somatic work and what that looks like and the difference in that versus maybe traditional talk therapy or coaching?
Yeah. So somatic work it's therapy of the nervous system. So we're looking at, you can tell me all day that you have, let's use it underneath a relationship lens. People come to me all the time and they say, oh, I have anxious attachment, or, oh, I am avoidant. And I say, okay, great. But how does that show up in your body? Because oftentimes when we go to talk therapy, we get a label, right? We're labeled with, you do this because of this, or that you are anxiously attached because of what has happened to you in the past. But what most talk therapists don't ask is, I'm curious, how does that feel in your body? What do you notice when you think about someone that you're in love with shutting down and walking away from you? What do you notice in your body? And what somatic therapy does is it allows you to take these patterns that have been labeled on you and get you to shift from this space of survival to safety in your nervous system. So that anxious attachment doesn't really have to be your label anymore. And neither does avoidant attachment. You can, for the first time in your life, know what security feels like in your nervous system. So somatic therapy helps you regulate and renegotiate survival responses so you can feel safety in your system.
Very perfectly and well said. For you, after that first session, you said it kind of changed everything. What did you realize in that moment? I mean, you've been doing all of this work that we're told we're supposed to do, all this personal development, affirmations, et cetera. I'm curious, like what came from that session? Like what real big, maybe realization?
Yeah. The biggest realization for me, and again, it wasn't like I went to one session and my whole life changed. This was, it was months and months of going to and working through somatic work in order for things to shift. But after the first session, I realized when I walked out of their office, I realized, wow, I've never actually spoken the language of my nervous system. I never knew how to get out of my head. All I could do was analyze and dialogue up here. I never asked myself, I'm curious, how does that show up in my body? What do I notice here inside of me? And so leaving that first session, I was like, oh, wow, I'm starting to tap into a whole new language that I've never even learned before.
Yeah.
So that changed everything for me.
Yeah. And I think that making those connections is so important. And I think, good talk therapist, and I will say for myself, like I do try to do that work as well, because bridging that gap, the rational mind, emotional mind, nervous system is so important, because in a lot of my work too with my clients, like they know it cognitively, but they still can't shift. So there's that extra step, I think, that is so important and so helpful and life-changing. I mean, you've shared just sort of how your life started to change and finding a secure, healthy relationship, and your business turned around.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think too, it's important to remember, and I say this all the time too, we need cognitive therapy. We need it, because if we just stay in the body and we don't work on making meaning and connecting the dots, we're only healing 50% of the puzzle. And the true is in the other direction. If we only spend time in cognitive awareness, we only spend time in the meaning making channel, and we're not looking at our body, again, we're only addressing 50% of the problem. So we have to have that balance of both in order for things to really start to click and change and shift in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you do the work, and you're kind of sharing what you've learned and being trained and learned and sharing it forward. What's that work been like for you?
I mean, oh my gosh, it's never ending. I'm consistently always working on myself. I still have a somatic therapist and a business mentor and a life mentor. I mean, I'm constantly pouring into myself, but really understanding how to learn the language of my nervous system has helped me guide other people there too, because I think that there are so many practitioners who they don't stay immersed in the work. I think it's really important as a practitioner that you continue to stay in therapy, that you continue to have mentors, that you continue to pour into yourself, because you're always shifting and evolving, and you need to be in that space to be able to fully support your clients.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's so important that the self-care and nurturing ourselves, it's so important. And I think the more we do the work for ourselves, the more we can give to the people that we're working with.
Absolutely.
You've shared very openly, and which I love, you share very openly on Instagram and social media about your own personal journey and timelines. And, I'd be curious just to learn more about your own timelines and the work you've done to dismantle timelines. Maybe where you were susceptible to timelines and then did the work to move away from feeling the pressure of timelines.
Yeah. Wow. This is a deep question, because it's something that I'm pretty heavily immersed in right now, is dismantling a pretty big timeline for me, which is having babies and getting married. Mm-hmm. I am 36, turned 36 a couple of months ago. And it was a really big birthday for me, because I had, through the work that I had done, I had stepped into a relationship that I truly thought was going to be my forever person. We met about a year and a half ago through trusted friends. And it's funny because we both were on the same trajectory. He wanted kids, he wanted marriage. It happened really fast. We were like, this is it. It was just like a whirlwind romance. I ended up selling my home, renting out my home in Nashville, moving to Denver. We moved in together. I mean, it was a whirlwind. We were ready. We were talking babies. We were talking children. And then about a year in, I woke up and I realized this is not what I want.
Really?
Yeah, he's a fantastic man. And there were so many things that I realized I was shutting down my voice and conceding to appease in that relationship that wasn't truly deeply in alignment with what I had claimed for myself long term. And so I share this story often, but I had a dream about 5-6 months ago where I was walking down the street and I was passing all of these people that knew me, my best friends, my coworker, people that work with me, and nobody recognized me. Like nobody was acknowledging me. And I came out of that dream and I realized this is not it.
Oh my gosh. Do you feel like the dream meant that you were unrecognizable? Like you had changed so much, you were unrecognizable to the people that love you, and you felt like you changed to make the relationship work?
Yeah, I changed. And it wasn't really that I had changed. It was that I had suppressed my voice and shoved a lot of stuff back. And I had that moment where I was like, if I continue down this path, people aren't going to recognize me who've known me for so long. And it was the hardest thing in the world because my number one dream is to get married and have children. And here I am. I was 3 months away from my 36th birthday. And I was like, I'm about to explode my entire life. I'm about to implode it all. And I could stay quiet and I could continue to shut down my voice and I could continue to concede because I have this dream of wanting to get married and have a kid. But I had to have a really honest conversation with myself and say, yeah, but what's really the dream? Like, what's the dream underneath the dream? And the dream underneath the dream is that, yes, I want to be married and yes, I want to have a child, but with someone I deeply, deeply adore and deeply love and can be myself with.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so that I have so many thoughts on that, and just how many women probably relate to that story and to dimming and to maybe censoring, because there is that big desire and we want those things we're told we're supposed to have at a certain time. And when we're around that time, it almost feels like, okay, like it's not that bad, or I could make it work. Or I think it's just so incredibly brave to do what you did.
Thank you.
And I don't say that lightly, because I know even coming to that realization, it was probably so hard to do. And it sounds like you did not love this person.
Yeah.
But I think that is incredibly brave and incredibly inspiring to anyone listening that might be finding themselves in a similar situation.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have spent many a nights crying and being upset and mourning the loss of what it represented versus the actual relationship. And I think that's a really important thing for people to decipher and understand is when it happens, when you have a dream and you think the dream has made it and then it doesn't happen, you mourn so deeply the representation of what ended versus what actually ended, because you didn't actually want that configuration of the way that the dream had been put in your life. And so that's just a really big thing to decipher when you're mourning.
Yeah. And I love what the grief of the picture, the grief of the vision, the grief of the timeline of when you thought the things were going to happen. I relate with that, and in a sort of a different context, and I've shared on here that I recently had a miscarriage, and like the dream to have the second baby at the time I wanted ends, and you sort of have to pick yourself up and like open yourself back up to a new timeline, a new vision. And that is really hard, and being in trust that it will come.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the big thing, is knowing. But here's what's really cool. When you've done the work to really identify exactly what it is that you desire, you can go back. And I did this when I left the relationship. I went back and I looked at the list, the dream. Like I actually wrote down my dream of what I wanted. And I recognized, he wasn't it. Like he may have been really close, probably the closest I've ever been. Right. But it wasn't it. And when you recognize that and you realize it, something opens up inside of you, because you recognize, wait a second, it wasn't supposed to happen this way. It was supposed to happen a different way. And that gives you the reality and the hope of what it is that you want to make its way in.
I think that's important to acknowledge, just the power of being grounded in that clarity and doing the work to get there is so important, because then you have this sort of blueprint or roadmap to say, this isn't it, and even though it's seemingly close, just having something, I think that's so important. Yeah. And I'm curious if like you have your clients do that work to just have that clarity or something to ground in or something to refer to. Because we can get, I think, and share your thoughts with me on this too, but I think we can get so clouded, external messaging, comparison, social media, I'm this age, I should have this. And like all of a sudden we're like not clear on what we actually want. So to have something to actually reference and say, okay, I'm drowning out all this noise. Here's what it actually is.
Yeah, that is exactly what I make my clients do. We don't get to it until we've done the nervous system work, because oftentimes, like, this is what I notice. If I would have woken up after that dream and I wouldn't have done the nervous system work to know safety in my own system, I would have stayed in that relationship. I would have continued to concede, because my nervous system was so comfortable and familiar and fawning in the fawn response that I would have stayed, because of leaving would have felt like death. I would have been like, if I actually leave, and again, it doesn't mean that I left the relationship and I'm like ready to go. It's not that I didn't mourn it, I didn't grieve it, right? But because I knew that what I was feeling internally was my nervous system saying, yeah, this is not safe for you. Because I had that awareness and that language, I was able to say, you know what? I have to honor myself right now. I have to leave. I have to go. And it's the same thing with claiming what it is that you want in your life. You can write down on paper all day what you want. But if your nervous system doesn't feel safe and worthy enough to claim it, it's not going to happen. You've got to do the deep work first in order for you to actually be an energetic match for what it is that you want.
Speaking my language, totally. Yeah. And I think, I think the thing that comes up too is, and I see this a lot in my work with my clients, and I sympathize with this. And, the podcast is called Quiet the Clock, because we can fall victim to time and running out of time and wasting time. And a narrative that I hear a lot in my work is, I don't want to waste time. And so when women go out and date like crazy and throw themselves into things and aren't taking the time to do the work that you're talking about, which is so insanely important. Yeah. And they're in therapy and they're there and they're doing it, but like the deep work to create that internal safety, I think is so important. But that can feel, I think, just tell me what you think. I feel like that can feel hard for women that are eager to find someone, have a baby,
Well, here's what I'll say to that, because you're actually wasting time by not doing the work. Because here's what happens. When you do the work to get super clear on what it is that you desire and you feel worthy enough to claim it, when you go out into the dating world, it becomes very black and white. When you have the vision of what you want and you go out on a date and you realize that this person doesn't align with what you've written down on paper, it's a very easy thank you, but this is not in alignment with what I desire long term.
Yeah. I'm curious too, like in your work and personally, how you start to dismantle the timelines, because I think that creates a lot of pressure. I think maybe anxiety, panic, and I will own 100%. I find myself back there wanting the second baby, and I'm working with somebody that prompted a really great question for me, which is, when did the best things in your life happen? And two of the best things that have happened in my life are meeting my partner and my son. And that's when I was probably in like no pressure, just really present, really in gratitude, probably very like regulated in my nervous system. But it's hard to, I've found it now, it's hard to get back to that. And I'm curious just how you personally are doing that work, how you work with your clients to kind of stay in that regulated state, to stay present, to stay in trust and faith that the things will come. Because, being prompted with that question, I realized that's when the best things in my life came to me.
Yeah. So I'll actually walk you all through a little exercise.
Love it.
Somatic exercise. Okay. So if you're driving, please do not close your eyes. But if you are listening to this, take a moment to close your eyes. And I just want you to notice when you think about wanting what it is that you want currently, right now, whatever it is that you want that you don't have, I want you to notice where you feel that in your body. So notice where you feel it. Yeah, tell me.
I feel it in my heart and my stomach.
Yeah. Okay. And what do you notice about it?
Warm, fuzzy.
Okay. It feels warm and fuzzy. When you think about not having the things that you want, it feels warm and fuzzy.
Oh, not having. No, sorry.
Yeah, not having. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wait.
Not having.
Oh, I did the having. Okay. Not having. I'm like clenching.
Right. Okay. Where do you notice the clenching?
My hands and my stomach.
Okay. And now I want you to think about where you were when you met your partner and your son for the first time. Yeah.
Oh,
I want you to think about where that lands in your body.
My heart, my chest.
Yeah. And what do you notice about your hands?
Everything feels light right now. Very, like, I think you saw my facial reaction. Like, everything feels happy and light.
Yeah. And what do you notice now about your belly?
Everything feels relaxed.
Right. So what you're noticing right now is the difference between somatically choosing fear over choosing love. It's literally that easy. You just identify the gap.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to geek out for a second, and we're going to go a little like quantum physics, woo-woo side of things. This is why I think the somatic work ties in so beautifully to quantum physics. The universe will respond to your most predominant frequency. People meet their partners and get pregnant with miracle babies when they're in that space that you just felt in your heart as their predominant frequency.
So is that what you just did there? Would that be like an exercise you recommend people do like every day to be
every single day?
Yeah. Okay.
Every single day, and feel into that feeling that you felt in your heart and in your chest for as long as you can, for 15 minutes minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other flip side to this is that there is something that is going on that is keeping you in that space of clenching. Your nervous system is saying, wait, something isn't safe enough for me to release right now. That is something that you come in and you work with a somatic practitioner to get curious about. We can't do that on a podcast. I can't walk you through that here, right? But it's something that we need to regulate to get to safety so that you have more access to that feeling in your chest. But the truth is, you had access to it. It's there.
Yeah, immediately.
Just how long can you stay there?
Right. And tapping into it and sort of consistently the practice of being in that is important.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that was going to happen today, but that is amazing. Thank you. You know, I feel like I'm so grateful for this because I get so much out of these episodes. I meet with such incredible women, and then I feel like selfish and like, this is like benefiting me right now.
Oh my goodness. No.
But, oh, wow. Okay. I love that. Okay. I think that is such a great tool to offer the audience of just very, very easy, very quick, but very powerful. I felt that tremendously. And it's wild how quickly you can feel the shift. Cause I was in the, if I have it versus if I don't have it.
Yeah. And it's all somatic information. When you think about not having it, you're in scarcity, you're in lack, you're in survival. Mm-hmm. When you think about, no, actually I am abundant, I am whole. Things do make their way to me with ease. That is expansive. And from that space, that is where you attract. But the problem is that most people are in survival so much that they don't have access to what you just felt in your heart. There's no access there. And so that's where we have to do the deep somatic work to be able to shift into those higher frequency levels.
Yeah. And that being the valuable use of time. is to be in these practices, to get in this energy, to stay in that frequency so things are flowing to you. I think when we're in place of, again, comparison and pressure and, societal expectation of certain things happening at certain times, we're in survival. We're forcing, we're pushing, being really intentional and taking the time to be in a different energy and space.
Yeah. It'll change your whole life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I felt it. I'm excited about that tool. I'm certainly going to use that tool myself. Good. One of the posts that you put up, which I want to talk about here today, is, I think it was a post about nothing is wrong with you if you don't want to freeze your eggs. We do talk a lot about freezing your eggs on here. And I do want to talk about that because it got me thinking about, is there a line where the conversation is not helpful to women? I feel that for me personally, when I was freezing at 37, I didn't know enough. No one was talking about it. I felt really alone. I felt really isolated. So I felt really passionate about cultivating more conversations, not just around egg freezing, more about these timelines and dismantling timelines. But I'm wondering, your post had me thinking, is there a line where too much conversation on it, or too much in your face conversation on it, is harmful and actually creating more pressure too, right? We have enough pressure and timelines and expectations. Do you think the conversation creates that a little bit?
I do. And I'll give you my own personal experience on this. When I left my last partner, when we decided to separate, I cannot even, my own therapist in the first session post breakup said to me, well, have you thought about freezing your eggs? And I was like, this is not the time. This is not the time to ask me that question. And so I know deep in my heart, because I've done so much work to get really clear on what it is that I desire in a partner and in a partnership, freezing my eggs wasn't part of the dream. Maybe the dream will change. It may change, but what I wanted, that wasn't a part of it. And I think that people do it out of goodwill, because they want you, if you do want a child, they want you to be able to have that experience if you haven't met the person that you're with. And there's a difference between, one of my best friends came to me and said, I want you to know that I love you and I am here, because she has been through IVF in so many different ways and has had a beautiful child after many failed experiences. And she just came to me and said, hey, I want you to know that I am here if you ever want to talk about anything in relationship to freezing your eggs, but I want you to know that I'm here to support you in whatever you decide.
Beautiful.
That meant more to me than someone saying you need to freeze your eggs. You're 36. I think that there absolutely is a line. There's a line between allowing people to do what they want to do and educating properly.
Right.
And telling someone that they need to do something because they've hit a certain age, because for me, it only increased the anxiety around the timeline.
Sure. Yeah. And the way that your friend approached it and expressed it and communicated to you is so beautiful. And I think that is the line. I think there is so much importance in knowledge. I think that was a huge gap that's missing and still missing. And I think being empowered and informed to make your own decision, to decide, yes, I want to do this, or no, it's not right for me. And I think, it's just so interesting, because I think there was such a need for the conversation, because there was such a lack of knowledge that now there is, but we still have to be mindful of that line, because the last thing I want to do, because I'm so passionate about these topics, is create more pressure.
Yeah. Well, and I think that leading from the space of knowledge and education, because the thing is this, when you hit at least in my experience, most women in their 30s don't ever think that they're going to hit 36 and not have children. This was not the dream for me. Right.
But do you think that's because of the sort of societal expectation
1,000%.
that we're told, right? We're told you will do this, you will go to school, you'll get a job, you will meet a person, you'll have a baby. And that is the linear path. That is the story we're told. So Of course we find ourselves there and I didn't meet my partner to 34. I froze at 37, pregnant at 39. We're still not married. It's just like, we got like one story to follow, and that was it.
Exactly. And so I think that there's a way of approaching any education that you give and saying, I understand that you're dealing, because for me, it was like, I was grieving the timeline. I was having to really grieve, like you said, what society said I was supposed to be doing at this age. I was grieving that. And at the same time, it was too overwhelming to think about freezing my eggs. Right. Yeah. But to know now that I'm in a grounded place and I have safety, and now I can actually think logically around, okay, maybe I do need to do this. Maybe I want to do it. Maybe I can entertain it. And to know that I can come and find you and get the education that I need to make an informed decision, versus having someone say to me, you need to freeze your eggs. You're 36. You need to freeze your eggs. You should have done it when you were in your 30, when you were 31, 32, early 30s. I'm like, gosh, it was just like beating me everywhere.
Oh my God. I, as a therapist, I hear so many horror stories, and I'm like, oh my God, like, no.
Yeah. The amount of messages that I received after that all went down, I had that post that you probably saw went viral. And I'll tell you, my best friend, and hopefully this will inspire people that hear it. The best friend that I was just speaking about, she froze her eggs, and none of her eggs took. So one of her best friends who lives in California had frozen and fertilized her eggs. And she ended up, right after she did that, she met the man of her dreams, and they had 3 kids together. So she had all of these frozen fertilized eggs. So my best friend used her eggs and had her first baby at 50.
What?
50. Now she's working on baby number 2 at 53.
Yes.
So and that's why when she came to me, I was like, I respect you. I will listen to you, because I know that you're holding the space for me to make my own informed decision. And I think that knowing that, and I think that's what you do for women, you hold the space to educate them so that they can make their own informed decision. And in essence, that's what we need. Like, that's what women in their 30s who are struggling with it, and 40s and 50s who are struggling with the timeline. We need the space to be held safe and to make our own decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think from that place, and I also think it's important I love the story of your friend. I love your story, like just normalizing. There's not one way, there's not one time, there's not one age. And so I think, more than like we're talking about egg freezing, it's just like, let's look at all these I have so many amazing women on here that are just fearless and brave and successful in their own ways. And just like everybody's journey and path is so uniquely different. And I just think not only normalizing, just celebrating. Like, I think it is so amazing that everybody's path is so different.
I agree so much. I mean, my best friend, built 3 successful businesses. She has been with her fiance. They've been engaged for, I think they're going on like 13 years or something. Like, they never got married. I mean, screw the timelines.
Screw the timelines.
Screw the timelines. Because it's not, you can build a really beautiful life in whatever way you want to build it.
Yeah. I think the beauty of your work too is getting so regulated in your nervous system, having internal safety, is that from that place, it makes it so possible to drown out all the other noise, right? Because while we can say, screw the timelines, we have like people around us that still believe in those timelines. We have generations that still believe in those timelines. We have cultures that still believe in those timelines. And so, all this external noise and pressure, is challenging. And I think from that regulated place, we care less about what other people are saying, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And that's the unfortunate part. Like, I think as we navigate our own journeys, I'm sure people might have had things to say about you leaving this relationship because, from the outside, it probably looked amazing. I think there's always going to be people that have opinions.
Yeah.
And how can we, and I'm curious how you work with that, like how you help yourself and your clients sort of drown out the opinions.
Yeah. I think it's less about caring less, because I still care. We're still humans. We still care. It still bothers me. It still hits a nerve, but there's a difference between it hitting a nerve and making it mean something about me, and hitting a nerve and it not. Like feeling how it feels in my body to hear that, but not holding on to it to take over the frequency of who I am.
I love that.
I think what somatic work does is that it gives you the tools to recognize, yeah, this hurts and it's touching this part of me. And I'm okay enough to sit with what it's touching and allow myself to be in that and experience it, but also move through it. And there's massive healing. And then what does happen is you hear something and you're like, there that thing is again. You know what I mean? It doesn't consume you. It doesn't become part of you to the point where you're really spiraling and feeling like this is taking over everything that I am and I'm doomed and I'm never going to have children and I'm never going to meet my person and I need to freeze the ruminating.
The spirals and all the unhelpful narratives. I think it's important too. I love that you said to sit with that. Obviously I tell a lot of my clients, let's sit with what's coming up, but like asking like, why is that? If there's something that hits a pain point or like, what is that telling us? Like, what is that telling me? Like, why, and being able to hold space for that and get curious about what is that meaning? Maybe there's part of us that is not totally regulated and we're buying into the, I'm never going to have a baby or I'm never going to meet someone and just in almost using that as like, thank you. Like, I'm going to pay attention to this right now. Like, exactly. I think it'd be helpful.
For sure. And getting really clear on where it lands in your body. Where do you notice it? And letting yourself feel into that, which is really big.
What are some other tools you might offer us today? I mean, you already gave us a really great one that I am so grateful for because I need it. I'm going to use it daily. But if there's some other tools that help, dismantle the timelines, move away from comparison, any other little nuggets you can offer? Yeah. I mean, I would say if you haven't done the work to sit down and actually write out what it is that you desire, and not even just in a partner, but what you desire in being a mom. It's one thing to write down what you want. It's another thing, like you said, to get really honest with why you want it. Because until we can connect to that why, oftentimes it's really hard for us to feel into the heart space. And so I would suggest get out a journal and answer this question. If nothing was a limitation and I could have everything that I desired, what would that look like? And then the next thing you ask yourself is why? Because when you can connect to the soul level of why you want something, right? It's one thing for me, I want a partnership and I have a big long list of all the things that I want in a partner. But when I get really clear on why I want that because I want to be able to feel love in a way that I've never felt love before. I have really deep unconditional love for myself, but I want to share that with someone else and experience that with someone. I know that I can reach more people with someone else in this work than I can on my own. And I want somebody who has a mission as big as mine to be able to share this work with the world. So there's a deeper why behind why I want these things. And when you can connect to that, it's much easier from a somatic sense to feel into where it is that you want to call that into your life. Yeah. I love that exercise too, because I think it's there's so much clarity because I think sometimes we don't know why we want something because for so long we're told we should want certain things, and just allowing yourself to be in that space to really understand your own why. And sometimes what I've seen happen, is people saying, I don't want that.
Want it.
Yeah.
I had a friend that asked me when the breakup happened at the right time. She didn't do it at the wrong time, but she came to me and she was like, I mean, I know that you want this dream, but have you thought about, is this dream really what you want? Like the why behind it. And I was like, I haven't thought about that in a while, and sometimes that can be a really hard conversation. We think that we're supposed to get married and have children, but I have so many women that come into my practice when they sit with it, they're like, yeah, I don't really think I want children.
I know. And just processing that because we're told we're supposed to want that. And I have seen that in my practice as well, where women are like, even just to be undecided, it brings up so much because they think something's wrong with them to be undecided. Like, I don't have this pull to be a mother. I'm like, and okay, but it's just, again, we're so ingrained with all of this messaging that we have to really start to dismantle that. It's like amazing to get clear on what you want, or it's amazing to question should I want this? Do I actually want this? That should be celebrated, not you should feel bad about that.
For sure. I agree completely.
Yeah. I love that question about limitations. And one thing I would maybe add to that exercise is sometimes when I give clients exercises is exploring what was hard about doing the exercise or why they didn't do the exercise. And so immediately when I hear you say limitation, no limitation, I could see clients struggling with, well, no, it can't be like that. Or no, it couldn't be like that. Or this is all the reasons it couldn't be that way. I think we're so narrow-minded and impossibilities sometimes. So I just kind of laughed a little to myself thinking about some of my clients trying to do that exercise. But yeah, I think it's, I think more conversations like this or celebrating paths that look uniquely different can open up the possibility or the vision that things can look
what it looks
kind of
Well, and there's a ton of power in writing down your limitations. So it's funny because I'm leading a 3-day workshop right now that's called Manifest Your Dream Relationship. And I have them do this. I have them write down their idea of their dream partner. And then I have them write down what were all the limitations that came up when you sat down and you wrote it for yourself, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And to stare those in the face. And then I give them the homework. Okay, now I want you to flip those limitations into non-limitations, right? Like limitless statements. Like what's the limit? If and an example would be one of my limitations was that I was too much. I always thought I'm going to be too much because I had so many men tell me like, you care too much about your work and it's too much that you're on social media and you have this following and that you care so like all of these things. I was too much. And I had to sit down and really face that. And when I was writing, there's no such thing as being too much. When I share my light and my knowledge with the world, I will attract a man who can hold that light so that I can spread it further. I was like, that felt fake for a while, but I had to look at the limitation to be able to flip it. And now it's ingrained in me. Like, I don't believe I'm too much. I'm too much for the wrong person.
Yeah. I love what you said. So I think, sort of the reinforcement of the idea and so becomes like it replaces the limitation.
Yeah.
Amazing. So where are you now? How are you feeling now? Just turned 36 a few months ago.
Yep. I do a lot of work in manifestation, and I had a vision when I was leaving that relationship of this really beautiful high-rise condo. And I couldn't make sense of it because my ex and I were talking about moving to either Phoenix or we were going to go to California. And the vision that I had was not in either one of those places. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. We're not supposed to be moving to these places. Why am I having this vision? And I ended up moving back to Nashville, which is where I lived for 12 years. And I was looking for a place to live. And I walked into this place and it was the exact match of what I had in my vision almost 6 months ago. So I'm right now, and I wish I could turn around and show the camera to everybody, but I have a full panoramic view of downtown Nashville in a beautiful.
Oh my God. Amazing.
Yeah. Like just rebuilding my life at 36. And it's hard. I have days where I'm like, I still feel that timeline. It's very real. Mm-hmm. But I know that I'm beginning a new chapter, and I feel, most days I feel pretty good, but there's also days that I feel crappy too, because it's a real thing. We have to mourn it.
I was just going to say, I love your honesty in that. I think that's so real. And I think I am there with you too. There are some days that are like, I'm good, I'm in good energy. And there's days that I'm just sad and wanting the thing that I want so desperately. So I appreciate your transparency and your honesty so much.
Thank you. Well, and you have to feel it. I mean, you're not, even though we felt that feeling of expansion in our chest, you can still feel that and grieve and mourn and be sad. That's part of the process too.
Totally. Well, before we wrap up, tell everybody where they can find you, maybe potentially work with you. I have really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah. So you can find me the best place to find me is on Instagram at Lauren Zoeller. You can go to my website, laurenzoeller.com, check out my podcast, the Align Love Podcast. I have a book coming out next year. Just follow me on Instagram. It'll all be on there with all the announcements and all the good things. And if you want to start to dive into this work, just visit the link in my bio. I have a free Find Your Soulmate mini training. There's also a 3-day intensive Manifest Your Dream Relationship. So there's all kinds of goodies on my Instagram page.
Well, you've offered so many amazing things here today too. So I'm sure everyone go check out all her stuff. She's incredible. And thank you, Lauren, for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I think it's no secret that I love the Little Words Project bracelets. I have about 6 or 7 on my arm, ones that have been given to me, ones I've bought myself. I love giving them as gifts. I think they're so inspirational for me personally. They're nice little reminders throughout my day to have hope, to be, have strength, to be in good energy. I just love the bracelets so much. I love giving them. I love receiving them. And if you want to check them out and you want to give it as a gift or get one for yourself, you can use our code QTC for 15% off your first order.